get going, and it's you're two guys sitting in the pub talking about faith, family, food, and fun, which I know you can handle. And I got Kalila. That's the one that Fa- Father Deacon Andrew Bennett had recommended for Montreal. So that's it's appropriate because that's where we had a great conversation out in Montreal in November. There, are you gonna join us for a dram or?
Yeah, so I've got a glass of good liquid water here. So
There you go. Looks
usually
like
during
you're
the day,
still at the
water is sort
office
of
and
the
working hard.
water is the favorite for me during the day usually. So
Okay.
and at the end of the day, that's where a dram comes in.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and I'm having to make a sacrifice of having a taste a little early, but I'm willing to make that sacrifice for the team.
Good for you. Good job.
Jeff, if you could tell the other people in the pub, who is Jeff Lockert?
Yeah, great. Thanks for asking me. Jeff Lockert, I would say I'm a father, a husband, a missionary disciple. I'm a skier, a teacher, a leader. There's a lot of different kind of roles, I guess, that I wear in my life. But I'm originally from Saskatchewan, so I was born and raised in Moose Jaw, a small city in the south, not too far from you, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents, my dad was a teacher, my mother was a nurse. Both came from farming families. So my ancestors were largely Europeans who came to Canada in search of new opportunities and new freedoms around the turn of the century in the late 1800s. So they settled in Saskatchewan, of all places, very, very cold farming communities. And that eventually was when I came into the world, I was in Moose Jaw. So I went to university in Saskatoon, and that's where I met my wife, Renee. We were both students at the U of S, both actually involved in Catholic Christian Outreach, CCO, which had a big impact in both of our lives. And that's, really what's led to a lot of what I'm doing today. I'm the president of Catholic Christian Outreach, CCO, and we currently live in Ottawa. We moved our headquarters to Ottawa almost 20 years ago from Saskatoon. And so still a lot of prairie roots, a lot of family out west. But we've been here in Ottawa now for almost 20 years.
So you did not get the love of skiing living in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, unless you were getting pulled by the pickup truck, which has been known to happen.
Sure.
Uh, I'm familiar with some of the. My grandparents were right on the U.S. border in southern Alberta, and
Yep.
so I'm familiar with the prairies. They've got a little more hills though, and we've been on our motorcycle ride, so it not only gets cold in Saskatchewan, it gets very hot too in the summer, and so I am somewhat familiar with it. Father Marius was giving me a hard time about we've got a picture with all of us with the moose and Moose Jaw and
Oh yes, Mac the Moose.
Max. Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
just
his name is Mac. That's at least, unless they've changed it. When we were growing up, when they installed that enormous moose sculpture, they had a contest, and somebody won, and they named him Mac the Moose.
okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, he said the rear of my bike looks like the rear of the moose, so
Okay.
that's what Father Marius's take on the whole
Yeah.
thing was. But yeah,
But
well, that,
you're correct about the skiing. So like actually my family we grew up cross country skiing in Moose Jaw. My parents did a lot of that, and so I
okay,
would go with them. But my favorite part of cross country skiing was always when there would be some hill, in the valley or somewhere where you could go down a hill. And then a friend of mine, when I was about 11 years old, introduced me to downhill skiing, alpine skiing, and took me out to a little, kind of hill in the Capel Valley called White Track. It's just outside of Moose Jaw, basically in Buffalo Pound Provincial Park. And then I was hooked. Even though it was a really really small hill, I just loved the speed and the wind and just the feeling of skiing downhill. And then, fortunately, we're not too far from the Rockies. Moose Jaw's 8 hour 9 hour drive to the
Yeah.
Rockies. So growing up in high school with friends, and then when I was in college, we'd head out to Lake Louise and Fernie and get some time on the big mountains, the real mountains.
Yeah, yeah, those are real mountains, and I don't know if you had the opportunity because you were just in Calgary for the Rise Up conference. Did you get some time in the mountains?
Yeah, we did. We so Rise Up, we were there from December 29th to January 1st for the CCO National Rise Up Conference. And then the day after the conference was over and we sort of wrapped things up as a staff, I myself, and I have a daughter who lives in Calgary now, and then another daughter, a son-in-law, and another daughter who was attending the conference. So we all actually went up to Sunshine Village for the day. So we
Oh,
did
that's
get a
awesome.
chance to get up in the mountains, which was great.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that because it's hard to even describe the beauty of the Rockies to somebody. Even pictures don't do it justice. Like we rode the motorcycles through the Rockies this summer,
Yeah,
and it was just it's incredible to see God's creation up close and personal and just soak it in because it's an incredible place. So I highly recommend people
absolutely.
to come up Calgary way, and the Rockies are 45 minutes from my house. So
Okay, you're offering free accommodation. Is that what you're saying?
well,
Vacations in the Rockies with
it,
Sean Lynn.
yeah. No, we'll have to maybe talk to the missus about that before
Right,
we start
exactly.
doing a B and B. Although the hospitality in Calgary is pretty special, and so what led you to continue with CCO all this time? Like you're a university student, you're hooked on Jesus, and what made it a career for you?
So when I went to Saskatoon in sort of that first year for university, I actually went on a scholarship, and I was pre-optometry. So I was a pretty heavy science load, and in that first year, having met some of the young people, CCO just started a few years earlier. So this was in 1994. CCO started in 1988. So I'd met a number of people in that first year, and some of them were involved with CCO, and I could see that there's something really unique and different in their life. There was a joy and sort of a peacefulness and a sense of purpose that was different than other people I'd met, and even different than my own experience in life. And so, to make a long story short, as I got to know them, I came to recognize and realize that it was this dynamic relationship they had with Jesus. So that in that first year, I had a really profound, well, it was a conversion. It was really a moment of decision where I was invited to choose to invite Jesus to be at the center of my life. And it just really transformed a lot of aspects of my life. And the first thing that it transformed was my career choice. So I realized kind of the main reason I wanted to be an optometrist was because I wanted to make a lot of money to be a doctor, have the prestige of being a doctor, and then work 9 to 5. So I didn't have to, do all these long hours like the hospital residents and such. And I was kind of coming at it from all the wrong motivations. And so the way I describe it is it kind of disoriented my plans. And then I took some time over my second year to really study and take courses in all different subjects, including theology at the St. Thomas More College in Saskatoon, kinesiology, and a number of other areas. And so I wound up majoring in kinesiology and sports medicine and doing a minor in theology. So I kind of, the way I described it is sort of like, the body and the soul, kind of this combination. And at the end of that time, I took the last year of my studies to really discern where God was leading me. And again, to sort of summarize it in a very brief way, I felt like God said to me, kind of as a summary of my discernment, I want you to be there for other students the same way that people were there for you in your faith. And so I felt this call to serve and to work as a missionary with CCO, and I applied and was accepted and began as a team leader in Saskatoon. And so that was really the start of my career. I mean, part of that story as well is the fact that my wife, Renee, was involved as a student, and then she joined staff as well, and we got married. So it was really a family vocation, a calling to work in evangelization on campuses together. And then just, from that, the Lord's just kind of continued to affirm and confirm, that call in our lives, and that led us to Ottawa. I serve now in leadership with CCO as a president. And so it's really been just following God's call in my life and trying to be faithful to it.
That's incredible. And just such a gift. And you're not just stopping there, because you're involved with this Global 2033, trying to encourage others to fulfill the Great Commission, and you want to see missionary disciples not only in university campuses but everywhere, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So just sort of two angles, sort of the CCO angle and then the personal angle. So CCO as a movement has always had a vision to renew the world. And really the university was for us, and it continues to be, the sort of strategic launching pad for that. Young people who have energy and enthusiasm and optimism. There's a saying that, university students are young enough to change the world, and to want to change the world, and old enough to be able to do it. So they have a certain enthusiasm. And when you look historically at, all the major revolutions throughout the world at different times, they're oftentimes led kind of coming out of university-aged people. So it's a really strategic place to be making investments for the renewal of culture and society in the future. But CCO's vision has not been to be only a youth group, let's say, on campus, meaning let's just have a social group of university students, but to build up and train and form them to be leaders, to be sent out, into parishes as alumni, into their professions, all different areas, into their vocations. So many of our alumni have discovered vocations, in ordained ministry as priests, in consecrated, lives as men and women, and then of course in marriages. So many people have met their spouses and began families. So CCO has this vision to reach the world, and part of that for us at this kind of, I guess, this moment, you could say, or this time in history, is I guess you could say the landmark, or the anticipation of the great Jubilee of 2033, the 2000th anniversary of the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so we're now in a Jubilee year, an ordinary Jubilee, every 25 years.
Yeah.
But we sense and we can see already that 2033 is going to be a tremendous time of grace for the life of the church. So for CCO, we've always had a heart for the world, and we've done a lot of work internationally as well, through missions, through conferences, through partnerships. We continue to do that. And so in those settings and those contexts, we've been seeing like a grace really sort of rising up all throughout the world to be looking towards 2033 as an important moment of grace and a pathway. We're describing it as a novena towards 2033. From 2024 to 2033 has been a novena, 9 years of journey towards this tremendous moment. So yeah, as a movement, CCO has a heart for the world, and we want to help catalyze others in Canada and beyond to reach the world for the Lord and to fulfill the Great Commission. At a personal level, one of the things that I've um, been involved in, international leadership at the church level, different committees and different groups. And so as the movement of Global 2033 was beginning to be formed a few years ago, I found myself sort of involved and connected with some of the key leaders to really catalyze a vision towards this great jubilee. And it really, in ways, even comes back to Moose Jaw, as I was mentioning, because um, I went to Vanier Collegiate, a Catholic high school in Moose Jaw, which our high school is named after the former Governor General George Vanier, Right Honorable George Vanier, who was a soldier and was a real committed citizen of Canada and became the Governor General. Well, written on our gym wall, our gymnasium wall. So every day I saw this for 4 years, from grade 9 to grade 12. And I was quite athletic. I did a lot of sports. So I was in that gym every day. Written on our gym wall was a quotation from him. It said, "Tell me the character of a nation's young people, and I will tell you the future of the nation." And so for me, I've had this heart and passion to really see our country, our nation of Canada, recover, rediscover what I describe as a Canadian Catholic imagination. Sort of a sense of identity and of dreams, really founded on the early missionaries who brought the faith to this nation, and people like George Vanier, who was a faithful Catholic, who sensed that as a country, what unites us together, what can bring us together, is this bond of faith in our Lord Jesus. So that's a part of our mission with CCO and part of my own personal mission, to really help our country to grow in character, to help young people grow in character, but to really catalyze a Canadian Catholic imagination.
That's awesome. And yeah, I remember one of our first spiritual directors, or Father Miles Gaffney, wrote a book with chapters on these holy people
Mm,
from a Canadian perspective, and George Vanier was one of the ones that he wrote a chapter on,
right.
and I can't think of the title of the book off the top of my head right now, but that's an incredible quote, because I did a lot of work with youth at risk of falling into gangs,
Mm,
working in the
yep.
high schools, and you can see their hunger. And as you know, I've done a lot of work with ministry to men, and we've
Hmm.
been doing that, the calling, and trying to drill down to get the younger men, rather than guys with gray hair like me saying, "I wish I'd done this." We're trying to capture those young men that are hungry to go on that mission. Like
Mm,
we talked about John Paul at the Rise Up, presented on house building in Mexico, and it was amazing how hungry these young people are
mm,
to be part of something bigger than themselves. And the statistics are coming out now that young men are becoming more religious than young women, and they're wanting that call that you're talking about, to go deeper and to be challenged uh, for what could be the future. And we can see where we're living in what maybe I would say failed attempts at that vision for young people, where no, mom and dad worked hard, you don't have to do anything, don't worry about it. And
right.
we especially young men, we we never encourage them to grow up, we never encourage them to become men, and that they were, oh, he's just one of the boys, right? Like
Yeah.
and that was prevalent through the 80s and 90s, and we're reaping some of that. 70s, 80s, 90s, we're reaping that, right? So that lack of vision for the future for the young people. So how do we turn this ship around?
Yeah, well, at the heart of it, and I'm so appreciative of the work that you do, Sean, with the men's ministry. In When I was still living in Saskatoon, and probably just early in my marriage, I think twice, two different years, I traveled with a group of young guys. Some of us were married, some were single, and we went up to the men's conference you started in Calgary. I think one of the original conferences that was because I remember Steve Wood was one of the guest speakers, and he was talking about Christian Fatherhood. Was a book he had just recently written at that time.
Yes.
It was a long
Yeah.
time ago, and it was sort of the his treatise on 7 important commitments, that Catholic men should make, to really take ownership and responsibility, for Catholic spirituality, for their men's, spirituality as man and as leaders in their homes and in their professions. And, at the heart of leadership, I think, really is character. And I've also done a lot of work. Part of my personal passion is the development of character, particularly for leaders, for men, for young people. And part of that character development really relates to developing them as leaders, because leadership is not just simply, as some people might think, the C-suite, or, the PMO, the Prime Minister's office, or something like that, these positions, of authority. That is, those are important positions. But at the end of the day, leadership is about influence. It's about helping influence others towards a good. And it really requires virtue. So I've been involved a lot in the cultivation of virtue. I have a blog, a personal blog, which is jefflockert.com. And the subtitle is Cultivating Leadership and Virtue. And so, I just think, coming back to this notion of young men, what's drawing them back into the church? Part of it is a vision for greatness. The Pope Benedict said, the world offers you comfort, but you were not made for comfort. You were made for greatness. And this notion of greatness is actually a virtue that's within our Christian tradition. Thomas Aquinas speaks about it, and other philosophers, called magnanimity. The habit of striving for greatness, which is always meant to be at the service of others and ultimately God. That we have talents and gifts and strengths, and that we can bring these to seeking to live wonderful and great lives by serving others. And so I think, as we see men re-engaging, and you see this, I think you see this phenomenon also affirmed in some of the popular realities, like around Jordan Peterson, Dr. Jordan Peterson, as he's
Yep.
calling young men to be towards excellence, right? Towards a higher standard, to self-discipline, to really, he's calling them to virtue, right? He's calling them to live the cardinal virtues. He's calling them to live high ideals. And so as we recover these realities in our lives, both the human virtues like the cardinal virtues and virtues like humility and magnanimity, as Christians, we also are strengthened and actually empowered through, classically what we would describe as the theological virtues: faith, hope, and charity and love. So we as Christians have this even greater power source, strength to live lives of character and virtue and greatness because of the Holy Spirit who dwells within us. So prayer, got to pray and ask for the continued renewal and outpouring of the Holy Spirit in our lives, because our faith begins through the action of the Holy Spirit. And then really we are invited to be responsible and proactive, to be leading characters, right? To take leadership, to take initiative, especially as men, to build our culture and our church to be the very best that it can be.
That awesome. We were just talking about this in our heroic men meeting this morning, about starting with prayer, and but just that call to leadership, to move them from, I said, to move men from pew warmers to disciples, and
Mm,
that's
yeah.
and a lot of that is just the tap, that invitation, and I'm sure that's how CCO is done so well. It's that invitation to come with me, that building of brotherhood, um, and there's such an opportunity, but so many people are afraid to even invite them to something even remotely religious for fear of well, it used to be for fear of getting canceled, which I see as on the way out. That doesn't seem to be as much of a thing anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really exciting to see where God's leading us as men, as leaders, as husbands and fathers, and so one of the things we often talk about is dad's dish. Like, is being a father, is there a dish that you prepare that keeps the family coming back to the table asking for more?
Great question. Yeah. It's so just a bit of context. So I am a father of six children. So I my eldest is 26, and it's my son, and then after him I've got five daughters. So I when he moved out during his university studies, it was me, my wife, my five daughters, and our female dog. So I said I'm kind of like blessed among women here. So I'm a family man very much. And most recent news is that our one of our older daughters, adult daughters, who's married, is now expecting a baby. So I'm going to be a grandfather in the Jubilee year now, 2025.
Congratulations. That's
So yeah,
awesome.
thanks. Yeah, so we're super excited for that. That'll be our first grandchild, and yeah, really a new stage of family life for us.
Yes.
But yeah, it's dish wise. There's a few different things. So as usual, I'm typically the guy on the barbecue,
Okay.
and so doing a lot of the steaks. Are usually there's a lot of compliments when Dad does the steaks. Nice medium with a good crisp on the outside. And then breakfast I as well is one of the things that I do, and so the one thing I'm known for, and this borrows a little bit from my wife's French Canadian heritage, but on special occasions like Easter brunch or Christmas brunch, I'll do crepes. So I get the batter all prepared the night before, and then do all the cooking, and I have a few secret ingredients that I put into the crepe batter to make them have a special flavor, and then of course all the fixins that kind of go
Did
into that.
did
So
did
crepes is
Andre
one thing
share
I'm
his
known for.
recipe with you for the crepes, or
What's
is it?
that?
Did Andre share his recipe with you for the crepes, or is that
So yeah, I am familiar. I've had Andre's crepes as well. So
yes?
yeah, he adds some special ingredients as well.
There you go. Okay. Uh, I, I've done lots of crepes. My grandkids, when they were, especially the older ones, when they were younger, they all demanded Papa make crepes, and
Oh
it's
yeah,
yeah, it's a process because you got to make a lot of them to fill people up.
it takes a while, and they burn quick, and so yeah, you got to be on that.
Yeah, I gotta.
Then it's all of the other things too, like we kind of get for the. I'm not sure what do your kids like. A lot our kids like either two kinds of we call sweet crepes. So it would be bananas and Nutella, with whipped cream inside. That's one absolute favorite. And then the other one would be strawberries with cream or any kind of berries, right? Like blueberries, just filled with berries. But sometimes we'll do the savory crepes, like bacon and eggs, and kind of wrap it all up there. And so that's another fan favorite too.
Yeah, those we've done them all, and lots of them, and it's. I haven't made crepes in a while. I've got a really nice pan that makes perfect crepes for me, so it's
Okay.
but I'm standing at that stove for a good hour and a half, because when you're
Yeah,
cooking for
yeah.
a number, you're there for a while. And you bring up Nutella. So I was at a men's breakfast last Thursday, and the priest during his talked about uh, the inventor of Nutella, and
Yeah.
and what a devout Christian Catholic man the whole family was, the lineage and the just the stories. They had no turnover in staff because they treated their staff like family. He was saying that if you had a prescription, you'd drop it off when you came to work, and it'd be there for you to take home at the end of the day. And like, they did a lot of lived out that virtue, even though they were some of the richest people in the world, right? They said that Ferrero Rocher was actually based on the rock formations at Lourdes. Is
Okay.
I
Yeah. No,
found
I'd
this,
heard about the founder of Nutella, and his faith and such. Um, yeah, it's. I mean, great examples, right, of men who lived excellence in all aspects of their lives. Their professional life, their family life, and then those virtues in the business world.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
just making sure that no matter where your state in life is, there's still a God, and you're not him.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and so as we go into this Jubilee year, we've our men's conference is taking on the same theme, Pilgrims of Hope, where we have an image of Mary and Joseph. Oh, she's pregnant. I'm saying it's on the road to Bethlehem, and
Yeah.
and they were truly the first pilgrims of hope, because they carried the hope of the world. And we have we have world premiere of the Litany of Saint Joseph in song here in Calgary on March 17th. That we please pray that we
Yeah.
sell out the place, because I think this is going to be an incredible special thing. But where does Saint Joseph? You talked about the virtues, or where is Saint Joseph in your life, and as that example?
Great question. I would say, like, my first, like all of, sort of many Catholics who've been, born and raised in the faith, which I was, but going to university, I really was questioning my faith, and had to recover it and rediscover it for myself. But Joseph is always that kind of quiet character, as you've described. You think about it having come through the Christmas scene, like accompanying Mary and kind of being there by the side, or the carpenter teaching Jesus in the shop. Um, so my first real deeper connection with Joseph was through the men's conference in Calgary, because it had this alignment to the St. Joseph Covenant Keepers
Yeah.
at that time. And so really leaning into, who was this man, because, there's not a lot said of him. The scriptures, there's not much at all. And then, of course, as Jesus enters into his public ministry, he's not there anymore. So we understand and we presume, obviously, that he passed away. Yet he had a really formative role in the life of Jesus. So I think, in a way, when we look at Jesus and some of the characteristics that he shows us in his humanity, as a man, I think in many ways we can look, we can see the reflections of St. Joseph there, because Joseph would have instilled and built into Jesus and raised him and to be his son. For me, coming to Ottawa, living in Ottawa, one of the great joys was the discovery of the Oratory of St. Joseph in Montreal, which you and I visited together
Yes.
just a few months ago. And it's such a blessing. Where we live in Ottawa, we're literally about an hour and 45-minute drive to the parking lot of St. Joseph's Oratory. So we stop there at least once a year. We make a pilgrimage, or if we're in Montreal, we'll pop in, or we go to a Catholic family camp called Dominus Vobiscum, which is just on the eastern side of Montreal. And so on our way back, we'll stop there as well. So the Oratory has been a really special place for me and my relationship with St. Joseph through St. Brother Andre, who had a huge devotion to
Yeah.
St. Joseph. We had Rise up there 9 years ago. And that in the Oratory, we brought, I think it was about 800 young people from all across the country, and we had Mass in the Oratory, in the upper chapel. And Rise Up is actually going to go back to Montreal this December, so it was in Calgary. And I think that one of my favorite parts of St. Joseph in the Oratory are the titles of Joseph, right? So you have in the crypt where there's all these candles, thousands of candles. And then you've also got like thousands of pairs of crutches and wheelchairs and, remnants left behind from people who'd received healings through the intercession of Saint Andre Bessette and, Saint Joseph, because Brother Andre would always say, go to Joseph, go to Joseph. Yeah. That was why he wanted the Oratory built, because he had a great devotion. So those titles have ministered to me in so many different ways over the years. Protector of the family, sort of patron of the church, these titles of Joseph. And I have a little book that was published from the Oratory that I've gone through, which is a deeper reflection on all these different titles of St. Joseph. So he's been a model for me as a father and husband, patron of Canada, patron of our church. Like, it's just, Canada is St. Joseph on overload, but you can't get overloaded, but it's just, we have such a gift in him in our country. And so he's a wonderful, wonderful guy. So excited for what you guys are doing in Calgary.
Well, and that's the whole reason we're doing this, is to try and honor his patronage for God Squad, Heroic Men, Canada. Like, I think given where we are in the world today, that I can't think of a better person to honor and go to and lead others to understand and do it with beauty, because beauty quite often is extremely attractive to people, right? And that's where we're seeing more people attracted to maybe a more traditional mass and stuff like that, because the beauty of music and form is something that we talked about the Rockies, right? Like, seeing God's creation just brings you closer to him. And that's what we're hoping to create. So
yeah, no, it's wonderful. Like, I think, there's something we call in the church and our history, but also in the area of evangelization, we describe it as, the transcendentals, right? Truth, beauty, and goodness.
Yeah.
And these are innate realities that are built into us because we're made in the image and likeness of God, that we can recognize, in others, but also in creation, what God has created, right? The world around us. So this element of beauty, I think was it Dostoevsky who said, beauty will save the world. It's an entryway. It's a way of opening the door for us to the transcendent, to the big questions of life. When you look at a sunset or you're in the mountains, you realize, or even the stars, right? When you're contemplating the stars, you think, wow, it's a big world and I'm really small. But yet at the same time, you feel, kind of a wonder at your own presence in the midst of all that, because you can recognize I'm here in the midst of this, in this time. And so it opens the door, the transcendentals, truth, beauty, and goodness, to being able to have conversations around, well, what is the source of truth, beauty, and goodness? And of course, the greatest illustration of the true, the beautiful, and the good is the person of Jesus Christ. And in him, we see these things made manifest. So it is a real opportunity that we have in our culture today, in our world today, to engage curiosity because so much of what we see in our culture is, ugly, depressing, and lonely. So to draw people into those big, beautiful, true, and good things is to draw them toward the Lord Jesus.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That's awesome. And we saw that when we were in Montreal because we talked about that. My wife and I went to Sunday Mass at St. Patrick's there. That's incredible. Notre
Mm.
Dame is incredible. So that beauty that you talk about does bring that wonder. That's why there's so many visitors to St. Joseph's Oratory every year. So it's, I want to thank you for joining us in the pub. I don't know if you know, but the Gaelic term for whiskey is Ishkabaha, which means water of life. And
Okay.
I, I pray that you lead many souls to the true water of life. And thank you again for joining us in the pub.
Yeah, I'm really. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to meeting again together in person, where we can sit in the pub together and enjoy the water of life together.
That would be awesome. Since you have family out here, you have no
Yeah,
excuse not to stop by the pub now. So,
sounds great.
all right. Thanks, Jeff. I hope you have enjoyed this episode of A Dram with Friends. Like and subscribe. Go to all podcast platforms to look for it on podcast, or go to godsquad.ca to support our mission.